Hi witches! So today we're talking about a subject that was suggested to me by one of my incredible patrons, Kamane, which I am still not sure if that's how you say your name, so I'm really sorry. I'm very bad with like phonetics and saying things properly. So today's topic is the intersection of folklore and witchcraft, which is a very cool thing that I got to learn about. Now, as a side note to my patrons, I know I keep doing these little announcement videos like this stuff will be up later. I am going through a lot right now. I don't know if you guys can see how tired I am on my face. I'm making a very large career decision and it's like very emotional and hard for me. I will have more information about that actually tomorrow, so I'm going to try to get this video out. I'm trying to get tomorrow's video up as well. And then throughout the week, I'm going to try to upload everything like one or two at a time for the next like week and a half because I'm going to be on vacation next weekend. With all that being said and this whole thing, once everything settles, I'm gonna actually have a little bit more time to work on these videos and stuff, so you'll see more frequent uploads of like smaller doses, if that makes any sense. So I'm really excited about that, and I'm really excited to be able to focus more time on witchcraft. I am in the works of like getting my store and stuff all figured out, so I do hope to drop my little shop and offer some like witchy services. I am officially an ordained minister, so like something like that. I have some tarot services and card reading services that I will be offering, as well as some other things, so I do really want to get that up and going. My ideal date to drop everything is Samhain or Halloween, which is the 31st of October, but more of that to come in future videos, and I'm very excited to talk about that. Anyways, today we are talking about folklore and witchcraft and like the intersection of the two. So folklore, I think, is something that we should talk about a little bit. I want to do an entire video. I just need to do a little bit more like in-depth research to really like write out what I want to say, so stay tuned for that soon. But folklore is basically local belief, to my knowledge, are like local beliefs, or more seen as like local beliefs that are not necessarily like tied to a religion. So it's more like regional or by nation or cultural. So you have certain like entities, but like also the gods are kind of like involved in that. So it's a very interesting topic, and it's kind of hard to go into, but folklore is essentially, like I said, a set of like local beliefs in like supernatural creatures, beings, things beyond, you know, our realm of reality or natural things. Anyways, it's hard for me to explain. I'm very tired. My brain's like short-circuiting. I'm so sorry. But basically, witches are part of that folklore, and I think we can all see the witch archetype in folklore from across the world. So you have, you know, American witches, you have like the Salem witch trials. I grew up like surrounded by a lot of like Appalachian like folk magic around me, I guess, and that's kind of like more that influence. I grew up, I don't know if you guys know, I'm from Virginia originally, so there was a lot of that versus like maybe folklore from the Great Plains or the Great Lakes area versus you know, trolls and gnomes and stuff like that from all the way across the ocean in Europe and stuff versus like sea monsters up in North. Like, it's a whole thing, right? So I think the witch itself is an archetype that carries out through all of them. It just looks a little bit different depending on where you're from, and I think that's very cool and pervasive. Like, witches are just like this almost accepted character or archetype in society, and I think that is like interesting, and a cool way that we can ourselves can like take on that character or archetype in order to become a more powerful and more involved witch, if that's something that calls to you. When we think of like the historical like witch archetype, I think that we tend to like conjure visions of like these monstrous creatures eating children, especially in the like Western European like sense. I feel like you know, like the story of Hansel and Gretel or something like that, like where the witch like lures children in to eat them. I think that it kind of served as a way to persecute people or women specifically who lived kind of on the outside fringes of society, as a way to kind of like, you know, not like oppress, but like oppress women who like, you know, were not tied to a man or were not like this obedient character. So I think that, you know, that idea as well is kind of representative of modern witchcraft. Like we can see the reflection in it. So like that folkloric witch character has turned from this like creature, this monstrous creature, into this like very sleek, like powerful figure. So I think that this folkloric character does really translate really well into modern like terms. I don't know what I'm saying. But I think that, you know, by going from it's transformed from this like monstrous creature into this very powerful like person. I think a lot of people who do turn to witchcraft are engaging in very transformative acts, learning new things and pursuing their own path, like relatively on their own. I know that we do have a community like this where we are very supportive of each other and really nice and lovely and wonderful, but for the most part, like especially me, like I see myself as like that solitary witch figure a lot. Like I had to learn a lot of this on my own. You know, it was very secretive, it was very like esoteric and arcane to my 13-year-old brain, but I think that it really does translate really well, like that archetype of the witch. So I think like when we talk about folklore and modern witchcraft, we cannot talk about modern witchcraft without talking about that folkloric like figure of the witch. And I think it's a very important thing that we can all learn from and channel a little bit in our craft. It's like, who is this arcane healer? Who is this arcane wise woman or wise man or wise person? You know, so it's something that I take a lot into my craft that way. So I like that, I don't know, juxtaposition. Yeah. So yeah, another way you can bring folklore into your craft is by working with the fae or spirits or supernatural entities that pertain to your culture or the place that you live. So like I said, there are definitely very like specified figures like fae, spirits, etc. That go with folklore for your area. So I do really recommend that people learn a little bit more about, you know, where they live, where they originally, you know, what the land came from, and obviously not too appropriate, just to learn, but also work with figures within your own cultures as a way to honor your ancestors. I think that's a really beautiful practice, and I really support it. As witches do have a unifying folklore, I think, with that being like the power of the moon, plant folklore, using herbs and magical things. We kind of have like agreed upon ideas of what each plant helps with the best. So now granted, that is different for all different practices. Of course, like you know, what I say for my craft doesn't necessarily need to like work for you. That's not what I'm saying. But there are generally agreed upon, like we use basil for abundance and we use rosemary for protection, like that kind of stuff. It's just these like very generalized, like a lot of witches adhere to this like folklore about these plants. We also talk about color magic, like crystal correspondences, any sort of correspondences. I feel like that is like a common folklore that we have as witches that is kind of specialized to our culture or practice, right? I'm not sure if that makes sense. It was kind of hard for me to like write that out, like write out my notes and like truly verbalize my feelings about it. I just feel like there are certain accepted beliefs amongst like most modern pagans that all kind of line up, and I see that being its own folkloric thing in and of itself. And then finally, I did want to touch on one thing, and that is the folklore of the burning times. So you might have seen like the shirts that say like, "We are the granddaughters of the witches you couldn't burn," or whatever. And there was a thing going around a really long time ago. Sometimes people still bring it up, but I think it's been mostly debunked, but I wanted to do my part in being like, this didn't happen. Someone wrote a paper about the fact that like millions of witches were killed in Western Europe between like the 1400s and the 1700s or something like that. And it was like this mass genocide, which is not what happened. So yes, people were definitely persecuted for like being witches, but when I do the air quotes, it's likely, you know, it's more because like they were women that men didn't agree with, like see the Salem witch trials. It wasn't because they actually were displaying like mystical powers and like flying. Like we as modern witches know that's not like a thing, right? Or I should hope so. Like you're not gonna be able to fly on a broomstick, guys. Like please don't try. But yeah, so that is like a weird like folkloric thing that does not actually exist. Yes, again, there are people who were burned or hanged or otherwise unjustly murdered for practicing certain things. You know, there were women who like performed abortions, or midwives who misdelivered babies that were like killed very frequently. People who were herbalists and were just misunderstood and persecuted by the church. Yes, those people definitely existed. However, it wasn't like this mass genocide of people. I think that the history books would have like talked about that a little bit more. So just as a thing, you know, like the burning times were not that. I want to make sure that people who are watching me understand that. So that's my little spiel. That was kind of like my main grasp of how folklore and modern witchcraft kind of intersect. And yeah, I'm sorry again, patrons, I'm doing my best. I'm in the middle of like a crisis, so I do apologize. But things are going to be really awesome, and you guys are going to get so much more content soon, and it's going to be so much more quality, and it's going to be great. And yeah, more news on that tomorrow, because I'm sure I have a lot to talk about, or maybe Tuesday I will talk about it a little bit more in depth. So yeah, I'll see you guys tomorrow.